In this non-fiction article, Jason Fagon argues that the system of lottery or gambling against the house can be statistically beaten if we know the mathematics and the loopholes within the system. With this in mind, he used a rhyming title named Jerry and Marge Go Large as a hook to draw in readers to this particular article. The main character of this article, Gerald Selby, an American breakfast cereal industry worker, is treated with due respect and characterized as gifted by the author. Throughout this article, the rhythm of the author's work is consistent in content and structure. He uses consistent voice in third person for Gerald Selby, who is the main protagonist, and he uses varied syntax related to short paragraphs to narrate the entire story in progression. The author talks about show don't tell method, where he describes Gerald Shelby in the very first paragraph like the person who solves puzzles around him, and without stopping there at a period, he uses the analogies like the little ciphers and patterns that flow through the world and stick to the surface of everyday things. Even during his work factory, he shows that where the cereals were cooked, he uses mental imaging like smells wafting into his office, like an aroma, like animal feed at first. He uses this vivid imagery to portray our environment so that it becomes easier as a non-fiction to interpret. Even though working at a cereal factory isn't the most interesting job, the author describes Sibbles as a very respected person, as he says that his mother worked in the same factory and he wasn't raised to complain about manual labor. At the same time, he describes him to be dyslexic yet to be gifted, where he had very great scores in the 8th grade standardized testing. Similar to con movies like Catch Me If You Can and 21, Jerry had a moment of epiphany during studying a flyer in a kitchen table where he saw that he could beat the numbers in order to gain lots of money. Being an avid fan of con movies, I had two perceptions. One, that these con men need to be young and mathematically brilliant, and two, that these people need to have a point of desperation in order to start this trade. So I had expected a lot of hit and run moments in this entire article. But Jerry was none of them. He was not young. He was not desperate. Like the text here, he believed that the lottery was only interesting as a phenomenon with odd. Learning about the context showed me that the lottery was an American pastime that stretched back to the colonial era, and the fact that it also had a rough history in Pennsylvania back in the 17th century. But the second context about huge revenue generation, about $80 billion in comparison to the US industry of films, showed me that this was probably a huge contributor to American tax code, where 11 states made more from the lottery in 2009 than they did from corporate income tax. Therefore, parts of this lottery was eventually legal. The creative part of this entire article is how the author portrays Jerry thought in his mind about this entire lottery concept. Using vivid imagery like questioning, could it be that easy, and simulating the game in pencil and yellow pad first, using the word yellow to create visual imagery, the author portrays a brilliant thing in paper. My attention bias towards con men made me justify this act because of their desperation and poverty, as I reasoned that they found a logical loophole and they deserved this profit. But as the context let me know that this money is also for state revenue, I realized that the conmen were using the money of the poor to fund themselves, which cannot be justified. And through this learning of context, I realized that I had a bias towards them. The author shows that these conmen have a confirmation bias within themselves, as well as tend to groupthink that conning is justified. Using unconventional methods of adverbs like flustered, the author maintains a consistent voice. Learning about the context of why conmen do these, I learned that people like Gerald do this to keep themselves young, to enjoy the feeling of youth. This article maintains all the qualities of a non-fiction and properly identifies a creative storytelling method to share Jerry and Marge's story.